One of the top Republicans in the state, Elise Stefanik, could be planning a run for governor. Hear from a political expert on what her run could mean for the state and the other candidates. Hello and welcome to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray.
And I'm Jamie DeLine. Congresswoman Elise Stefanik might be eyeing the top leadership position in New York State.
Now, according to the Associated Press, she is considering a run for governor.
The next gubernatorial election is in 2026. Kathy Hochul has already announced she will seek re-election. Stefanik hasn't officially announced her candidacy, but she did respond to a Marist poll that found 57% of residents statewide do not want Hochul to run.
Now, other Republicans rumored to be running in 2026 are the Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman and Congressman Mike Lawler.
We'd win her seat if she was sitting in her seat because people are so frustrated. Republicans who live in the North Country, who are coming to see me, farmers and people who are saying, this is unbelievable that no one's standing up for us, and the tariffs, what they're doing, and the cross-border trade that is non-existent. No matter who the GOP nominee is next year that I'll be running against, it'll be an extreme mega Republican, and I look forward to that fight.
The governor also facing challengers from her own party. Hochul's current Lieutenant Governor Antonio Delgado saying, quote, all options are on the table, but he has not announced his candidacy.
Joining us now to give additional insight on the possibility of Congresswoman Stefanik running and what it might mean for the whole race, Doug Ferrand, senior partner at Red Horse. It's a campaign strategy firm, and you are down in New York City, Doug, correct?
I am down in New York City, although I am a Capital Region native, and it's always good to talk to the hometown media. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, you're talking to the whole state on this show. Let's just jump in. Were you surprised that this even got floated out there that Stefanik might suddenly want to run for governor?
A little bit surprised because it seemed like a pretty unlikely move, but I can understand where she is coming from on this. I still think it's a very, very long shot for her, but in the aftermath of having her UN nomination withdrawn and sort of being told you can't do this, even though you're coming from one of the most Republican districts in the state, while someone like Mike Lawler is, who arguably running from one of the most vulnerable districts in the country, is being allowed to float his name out there. I can see her thinking like, well, why not me? Why can't I put my name out there? In full disclosure, we are working with candidates in that race down there, a candidate in that race down there. So I'm not exactly unbiased, but I do think Mr. Lawler is extremely vulnerable.
Yeah, and I also, do you think we are all, I'll say we, the public, the media, are we underestimating the devastation of having that? It wasn't like her name got floated and got taken back a week later. This was close. It kept getting delayed. It was getting closer and closer to the vote. Seemed like she was going to get through, and all of a sudden it's like, you know what? Never mind. Then they pull it away, and I know she retained some title in Congress, but she did lose some of the status. Are we underestimating the effect this might have had on her personally? Like, boy, I've taken a step backwards because of what you guys did.
I think in a very big way, yes, that's true. I mean, it's not just losing status in Congress. It's losing the opportunity to move up to not only a national but an international stage for her, and she was poised to do that. And again, every elected official is sort of, looking at where their career is going to go from where they are right now. And hers was on a very upward trajectory. And then it just got, the rug got pulled out from under her. So she, I can see her thinking like, okay, well, what are my other options for, advancing my career? And, the governorship is sitting there, although again, it's a really high risk race. And ultimately, if she's going to make the decision to give up her seat in Congress for that race, I think that's a tough decision for her to make because she's in a relatively safe seat as an incumbent, and it would be a very, very high risk run for governor in a state as blue as New York. Yeah,
well, that's shooting the moon because if you don't get it, you're not going back to the congressional seat, up North Country. You're going to have to go do something else, and she's still a young woman in those regards. Do you think she's looking at the polling too? Because we saw some recent polling with Kathy Hochul where more than half people, at least in that poll, said that, you know what, if somebody else was governor, I'd be okay with it. Do you think she's seeing a vulnerability there that maybe this would be the time where the right, all the stars are lining up where she could get in there and take it, even though we're very much a blue state?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the Congresswoman is a smart enough politician to always be looking at polls before she makes any decisions like that. And she may see some vulnerability, but I also, if I were in her position, I wouldn't read too much into that. It's easy for voters in the abstract to say we're not thrilled with Kathy Hochul, but that doesn't mean that in a state like New York they're going to turn around and elect somebody as like sort of closely aligned with Trump and the MAGA movement as Stefanik is.
If you're helping a candidate possibly in this race, you must know what the calendar situation is. When do these people have to really make a firm commitment that, like Delgado on the Democratic side, or in her case, Stefanik on the Republican side, when do they have to really decide? Is it this fall, or is it sooner than that?
It's even sooner than that. I mean, one of the changes in New York State was the advent of the matching funds program for state level officials, both statewide and local senators and assembly members. And matching fund programs do create more competition. They're good in that sense, but it takes much longer to raise money on a grassroots basis the way that you have to for those programs than it does in sort of traditional high dollar fundraising, which is where most politicians have established their base in the past. I mean, she's very strong in the DC world, and again, like I think she probably has something of a national base at this point. But raising those small dollar donations just takes a lot of time. So if she's serious about this, I think she would need to start raising money by this summer at the latest. Otherwise, she's just going to find her options more and more foreclosed.
Is she allowed to take any, and maybe you don't know the answers, a big pile of congressional money that might be in a fund and shift it over? Are those considered separate lanes and you can't do that? Do you know?
So I don't know under the current rules. Under the previous rules, because the congressional system, the federal system is more restrictive than the state system, you were able to do that. Under the new matching funds program, that's probably harder. What she would have to do more likely is refund money to those donors and then try to resolicit it back into a new committee, which is, it's again, like it's doable and candidates do it, but it takes a lot of time. Yeah,
that's like putting the toothpaste back in the tooth. But let me ask you, we're under a minute here, but Politico just ran an article saying that Lawler, she's not a big fan of Mike Lawler because of some various stuff we won't go into because we don't have time, but this is her even just hinting at this going to hurt his fundraising, where if you're a Republican donor, you say, well, wait a second, if she's going to get in, why am I writing you a check?
Yeah, I think it will. And again, like I think the pressure on him is going to grow not to vacate his seat, because it is generally assumed that, that's a super vulnerable seat, very flippable. And, from my perspective, it has a very good chance of being flipped in the 2026 elections. So I think she's putting the message out there. Republicans have other choices than Mike Lawler for who to choose, and he just needs to stay put. And again, as somebody who was told herself you have to stay put, even though she's in a relatively safe district, I can see her saying like, well, if I have to stay put, this guy who's going to lose his seat needs to stay put also and fight the good fight. It's going to be fun to watch either way. All right, Doug Ferran, thanks for coming on. We do appreciate it. Thank you, John. Yep. Bye now. If you're planning a summer vacation that includes a domestic flight, there's an important deadline you need to know about. When we come back, we'll hear from the DMV on the deadline to get your real ID. We'll find out what it takes to get one and what we'll need for it.
If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X, formerly known as Twitter, at WTEN.
Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. In less than a month, those looking to board domestic flights or come into some state buildings will need a new form of identification called a Real ID.
The deadline to get a Real ID is May 7th.
The fast way to check and see if you already have a Real ID, check the top right corner of your ID, and if there's a star, you're all set.
To get a Real ID, you'll need to visit the DMV and produce some personal information, including your social security number and 2 proofs of your address.
The Real ID deadline is due to legislation passed in 2005, creating a national minimum requirement for state driver's licenses.
Joining us now to give additional insight on the incoming change to Real ID in New York is Walter McClure. He's the Director of Public Information for the DMV. Thank you so much for being on.
Thanks for having me, Jane.
So what is the difference between a regular driver's license, a real ID, and an enhanced license?
Well, what you're talking about, the sort of the standard license has on it, it says not for federal purposes, which in this case is what you won't work for you if you're going to get on a domestic flight. So the real ID has a star on it. This has additional security measures, and it is part of a plan to make sure that when somebody comes to the TSA checkpoint, that the TSA security agents know that the person that they're talking to is who they are. The enhanced ID is a little bit different. It has a flag on it, and that allows you to cross from the U.S. into Canada and Mexico by land or sea, or also allows you to go to certain Caribbean countries and areas by sea. It does not allow you to fly into those areas, however. You still need a passport for that.
And why is there this change? Why do people need to start upgrading their license?
Well, this is a change. This actually has been coming for quite some time. This all was an offshoot of 9/11 and the 9/11 Commission, because the hijackers of the planes were able to get license documents with fake names. What this is doing is to ensure that when somebody is going to get on a plane or is going into certain federal buildings, federal facilities, that the person that is coming in is who they say they are, that they've gone through vetting and that they know who they are. So this actually, it was signed into law in 2005. There have been a lot of delays along the way, trying to make sure that all of the states were ready or could be compliant. So there have been delays, but this time, despite what everybody has said, the TSA has said this time it is going into effect on May 7th. So if you're before then, you're fine. If you're flying after then, you could still be okay. I know part of the issue, and I'm sure you'll get into this, is that people have had maybe difficulties getting into an office, making an appointment to get their things done. If you don't have to travel like imminently, like on May 7th or immediately thereafter, you can wait a little bit longer to do it. If you're not due for having your license renewed, or if you have your passport or you have global entry or some of those types of things, you're okay, and you could put off making the upgrade to the real ID or the enhanced ID.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, are you seeing an influx of people coming in trying to get this done before that deadline?
We certainly have. And what we have done, the situation in New York is a little strange. DMV has a number of state-run offices that are in Albany County, Onondaga County around Syracuse, also the New York City metro area. So in the city, Westchester, Rockland, Long Island. The other parts of the state, most of upstate, the offices are run by county clerks acting as agents of the DMV. What we have done at our offices is have added additional appointments. We have been doing in certain offices on Thursdays just exclusively real ID and enhanced ID transactions. We've opened on Saturdays from 8 to 1 at a number of our offices in the New York City metro area to accommodate that. Obviously, there's a larger population there. That's where we know the demand is going to be greatest. So that's what we've done. And my understanding is that the clerks as well have done. I know some clerks do have Saturday hours. Some clerks might have extended hours to accommodate this. And I know that in some areas, some of the clerks have already been having people, kind of suggesting to people ahead of this to get the real ID, knowing that this was coming. So there may be, in some areas, there's already pretty decent compliance. We're seeing statewide about 44% of license holders have a real ID compliant document. So there's about 15 million people who have, whether it's a license, a learner permit, or a non-driver ID. And about 6.7 million of those right now have that documentation. In addition to that, because we've got a lot of people who do travel internationally, there are more than 10 million people in New York who have passports. So that also obviously is an acceptable way to get yourself through the TSA checkpoint and onto a flight.
Now, what documentation do you need to bring to the DMV to get your real ID or your enhanced license?
You would need to bring your current license, bring your birth certificate, and these need to be original copies, originals, not copies. Your birth certificate. If you have been married or divorced, you would need to have a marriage certificate or divorce decree in order to show the progression of your name change so that they know it's you. Your social security card, your social security number, your a utility bill or a bank statement to prove your residency, to show that you are a resident of New York. We have on our website dmv.ny.gov, we have put a ton of information out there. If you go to the homepage, one of the first things you're going to see at the top is says get your real ID now, and there's a button on there that says find what you need. If you click on that, it takes you through everything that you need to know, kind of what has led us up to this point. It takes you through, there's a document guide so you can go through and make sure that you have, the right documentation, enough documentation to get your ID. They're also in some offices around the state, there's the ability to do what we call kind of a pre-screening, where if you can scan and upload your documents, you can send them for pre-screening. They get checked. Someone will make sure that you have everything that you need and before you come into your appointment, because the goal here obviously is we want to get people in and out as efficiently and quickly as we can. So if everybody has everything that they need, if they've done that, we're trying to get people in and out in a half hour or less, if at all possible.
And my final question for you is, how much does all of this cost?
For a real ID, it doesn't cost you anything more than a standard license. So if you're going for a renewal, it would be whatever your regular renewal fee would be. For the enhanced ID, there is an extra $30 charge, only because it involves more processing on our part and there is more security and more vetting that has to go through. So that was going to cost you a little bit extra, but you've got the opportunity to take that without to cross international borders without having to take your passport. So it makes it a little bit more convenient for you.
All right, we'll have to leave it right there. Walt McClure, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
In Albany, lawmakers seemingly not in a rush to finish the state budget, now 3 weeks overdue. When we return, we'll take a closer look at how discovery reform is impacting budget negotiations.
And a reminder, if you have a comment or story idea, please tell us about it. You can email us at news@news10.com. You'll also find us on X at WTEN. Welcome back. At the Capitol, budget negotiations continue at a gradual pace, with policy items like discovery law reform still being discussed.
Well, we're hearing progress is being made on the proposed changes to the state's discovery law. I caught up with others who say it's not a done deal. Governor Kathy Hochul has been holding press conferences every day this week on her proposed changes to the state's discovery law. The diehard Bills fan used a football analogy to describe how close they are to an agreement.
We're not in the end zone. Maybe we're on the 5-yard line. Is that close? Okay. But I know one thing from football, you don't spike it until the game's over, okay, or until you get the touchdown.
On Tuesday, Assembly Speaker Carl Hastie said part of the negotiation centers around a 2023 Court of Appeals ruling in a case called the People versus Bay. According to attorney Bob Babcock, the case deals with the time frame prosecution has to share evidence with the defense.
People versus Bay is a ruling that came out that stated that if the prosecution fails to comply with its obligation to turn over discovery, which is basically evidence, in a case in a timely fashion, the remedies for failure to do so can be severe, all the way up to and including dismissal of the charges.
According to the governor, there's been a 26% increase in domestic violence cases being thrown out since 2019. Hastie says he's been working with district attorneys.
DA Bragg brought up a case where a domestic violence victim, a case was dismissed because there was a picture that I think the victim's best friend had taken, and the prosecution turned that over. That led to a dismissal, and we kind of used that type of case to get us to where we needed to be.
Some lawmakers have worried that the changes to the state's discovery law could result in wrongful convictions. The speaker mentioned on Tuesday that prejudice would be a factor for judges to consider.
Stick around. We'll be back with a look at the week ahead in just a bit.
If you have a comment or story idea, let us know. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on X at WTEN.
Finally, at Empire State Weekly, we are continuing to keep an eye on the impact the Trump administration's immigration policies are having on college students around the state. Some international students attending local schools recently had their student visas revoked.
As of this week, SUNY reports 40 students across the state recently had a change in visa status. Several colleges in the capital region reporting they did not receive notification from the federal government ahead of the change.
Now, next week, we'll be looking to talk to an immigration expert on all these changes and what options the students have, if any. For now, from all of us here at Empire State Weekly, I'm John Gray.
And I'm Jamie DeLine. We'll see you here next week.
Don't you forget, you can watch Empire State Weekly all over New York State. Here's the full schedule of the TV stations carrying us across the great state of New York.